Hey, this is Brian Crecente. You are on Friends List, and today we're going to have a special edition of this show. We have with us Andrew Wilson, the CEO of Electronic Arts. I like to call him the head honcho of Electronic Arts. And we're going to be asking questions that you sent to us. I picked out some. So what I'm going to do is read these questions out loud to you. We'll get the answers, and if there's some sort of obvious follow-up, I might do that. But basically, these are questions you guys asked. So let's get started.
Okay.
First question is from Sean McElroy. I'm going to mispronounce everybody's name. That's going to be the thing.
McIlroy, I would think.
Yes, probably. He doesn't even know you, and he probably and I do know you. That's the most embarrassing thing. Okay, his question is, now you have the opportunity to set your own prices on Xbox One and PSN. Will you be running EA sales much in the same manner as you do on PC?
I don't think we're at that point yet. I think our focus right now has been to build just amazing games and software. We're just around the corner on the eve of that. We've got Battlefield 4, FIFA, Madden, NBA Live, Need for Speed. So that right now has been our number one focus. I think when it gets to pricing, there's a whole range of different questions that we have to answer before we ever get to that.
All right, okay. Next question comes from Skyfish. Consumerists named EA the worst company in the world 2 years running. While that's a bit of an exaggeration, did that distinction influence the company's philosophy and day-to-day operations going forward?
Listen, I think it was a wake-up call. Whether you respect the source or not, I think it was a wake-up call, and it was absolutely something that we spent a lot of time and energy over and continue to spend a lot of time and energy over. And for us, it was less about, how do we not get voted the worst company again, but more about, okay, are there things that we could do differently or things that we have done that have been misinterpreted that would cause people to feel that way? And again, what we've done is we've said, okay, what is our role? Our role is to build great games and services. Is there anything that we're doing that is, an impediment to that or an inhibitor of that or perfunctory to that? And what we've been doing over time is really working to either update those things or eliminate those things and really get back to our focus on games. Because at the end of the day, if we're making great games and services, we won't get voted worst company in America again.
Team 56th, maybe? What is EA's stance on games on Kickstarter? So I'm going to sort of summarize what he's saying, but basically, you guys have had a long history in doing different things to support developers who don't work directly for you. Mm-hmm. Kickstarters come in, and now they're in some way doing that on their own. Of course, there are also a lot of studios that are going to Kickstarter and mm-hmm. maybe going around third-party publishers like EA. So what do you guys think about Kickstarter, and is it having any sort of impact on how you do business?
I think it's awesome. Again, I grew up playing games, I grew up making games. Anything that facilitates the ongoing growth of development of great software for gamers and that pushes our industry forward, that drives a different kind of innovation by virtue of different thought process or different development process or different creative process, I think it's awesome. So listen, we're not the only game maker or game publisher in the marketplace. As every new publisher comes in, as every new platform comes in, gamers win and games get better. And so if there's a different way to do that than we're currently doing it or have traditionally done it, i.e. Kickstarter, I think it's amazing.
Do you think, I know that there have been some games that have gone to Kickstarter. I don't think, maybe they have, but I haven't seen any that have named one particular company. But there have been some that have said, I'm doing this because I don't want to deal with big publishers. Mm-hmm. Do you think that says something? Is that a fault, you think, with big publishers, or do you think it's just that there's another route?
Oh, no, I think it's the prerogative of the game maker to get the game to the gamer in the best way possible that they think, right? So at the end of the day, they have a creative energy and a creative center and a way they want to get that to gamers. And I think it's great that they have multiple choices, whether that's through, the iOS platform or whether that's through, Google Play, or whether that's through Kickstarter, or that's through us, or direct with Microsoft or Sony. I think, listen, as long as we're getting great games out there, as long as we're pushing the industry forward, as long as we're driving innovation, I think any path is a good path.
Okay, Doc Seuss, excuse me. After the poor reception and/or sales of games like Dead Space 3, SimCity, Dragon Age 2, and the like, which eschewed the well-received and best-selling design philosophies of their predecessors, will you be returning to the more traditional products and focus that resulted in the kind of critical acclaim that made Dragon Age Origins, Mass Effect, and the like best-selling titles?
So listen, I actually wouldn't agree that there was poor reception. I think that when you push the boundaries and you drive innovation, there are certainly challenges, and SimCity certainly had its challenges, but that player base continues to increase and grow and continues to be engaged. I think Dead Space was a phenomenal product. And as we look at our industry and we look at IP overall, some things get done on an annualized basis, some things get done biannually, some things get done every 5 years. If you look at GTA 5, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I look at what J.J. Abrams did with Star Trek and a reinvention there. And for us, it's really about, is there a team with a real passion and a creative energy around a particular IP and how best they want to develop and implement and distribute and publish that. And for us, there's nothing wrong with going in for a few years and sitting out for a couple, going in every year, or listen, going in once every 5 or 10 years, as long as the games are great.
Kovar. He has 2 R's, so I'm not sure if it's Kovar or Kovar.
But cool nonetheless.
Yes. It seems like most of your sports games, except FIFA, NBA Live 14, Tiger Woods PGA Tour 14, Madden 25, NHL 14, SSX, don't ever see PC versions. Is there any chance we could see more PC sports ports in the future?
So first, I think the thing I'd like to say is, what we do in porting we shouldn't ever get in that position. So, I think if the idea for us was to just port our console products to PC, that would be a bad idea. And I think part of what we've decided to do is to say, hey, listen, we need to make the best possible games for the platforms that make sense. And right now, the predominant gamer base, other than FIFA, really play console or mobile for that matter. And so, could there be PC sports games in the future? Absolutely. Right now, I don't think that's where the major player base is. But we never say never. But what I would say is if we do make that decision, it won't be about porting the console experience. It has to be about building a product that makes sense on the PC platform.
So just a follow-up, when you say that, why not? What's the downside of doing a direct port?
Every platform comes with its own, pluses and minuses, right? So every platform has benefits and every platform has kind of trade-offs when you think about building. And the platform trade-offs between a PC and how you play a PC game, even if it's with a game controller, it's the focal length that you have, it's the environment that you play in. There's just a different modality of play for that kind of lean-in PC experience than there is in a lean-back console experience. And listen, I think that with the architecture of next-gen platforms being more similar to PC, there might be an opportunity to do more there over time, but you can't disconnect from how a gamer plays irrespective of the architecture. And the PC gameplay environment is traditionally different, even by things as simple as focal length, than it is the console. And that changes how you have to present the game, how you control the game, and ultimately how you enjoy the game.
Mike the Iron. Okay, I was going to try to make that one word for a second. That wouldn't have worked. Okay, Mike the Iron. Okay, so with the huge success of Simpsons Tapped Out, but the closure of Playfish, and more recently the cancellation of the new Command & Conquer, what future do you see for free-to-play gaming in general, and more specifically within EA?
I think free-to-play gaming is going to be a very, very important part of our future. What a lot of people don't realize is it's actually been a very important part of our past. We went free-to-play with FIFA back in 2005, 2006 timeframe. I've had free-to-play FIFA products through Asia for a number of years, and we've seen unbelievable engagement and growth based on lowering the barrier entry due to the business model in those regions and territories that make sense for them. So the things that you see us do when we make a decision not to pursue something, it's less about our commitment or lack of commitment to a business model, and more about do we believe that that's the right game to make. So as I look forward, I absolutely believe that free-to-play will be important, both on mobile phones and PCs, and who knows what happens with consoles in the future. I know that some console manufacturers are kind of experimenting with that even as it relates to their platform. So I would like to believe that we are getting better at building great engaging experiences through that business model, and that will be an important part of our future.
Do you think that the sort of ebb and flow of free-to-play is tied to the tail end of the current gen consoles and then the coming next gen? Like, is free-to-play sort of moving over now that next gen consoles are coming?
I think they can coexist. So I think about how I watch television and how I consume television. So I give Comcast a bunch of money on a monthly basis to have them stream television to my living room. I also do kind of monthly upsells. Every time I watch a UFC, I buy it almost like a free-to-play type transaction. I watch TV through Hulu and YouTube, and I buy a bunch of television through iTunes that I watch on planes. I mean, all of those business models I interact with, whether it's free, whether it's kind of singular transaction-based or subscription-based or just a premium experience, I mean, they all coexist based on how I'm consuming media at a particular time and place. And so as I look to the future, I don't think one precludes the other. I do believe they coexist based on where people play, what people play, and how people play.
Vermint Wrangler has a question for you. How would you compare the rough launch? By the way, before I ask this question, this is my favorite question because
Okay.
I've been asking a lot of people this question, and it's just great that a reader asked this. How would you compare the rough launch of SimCity to problems being experienced with the U.S. government's healthcare.gov rollout? Can the government learn from game developers in the way they roll things out?
Well, are you really sure you want an Australian answering a question based on the running of the US government? I mean, we haven't done so well ourselves, right?
Well, you guys have healthcare now.
We do have healthcare. We haven't done so well ourselves. Here is how I would answer. I think the short answer is, as all of mankind right now transitions to a digital type world and a digital type experience, and you think about the scale and the load that comes from all of mankind transitioning and getting access to information through digital channels. I think what we learnt around SimCity was, you need a very robust test system. It's very different than the one you've ever used before. You need a very robust kind of launch process, which is very different than anything we've had before. And you need a very robust kind of follow-up process that ensures that you can remedy issues very, very quickly. And certainly that was on a much more escalated level than we've ever had before. So everything that comes as a result of scale and load and mass access to information requires pre, during, and post changes to how you do things. And I think the US government is probably finding exactly the same thing.
They've discovered. It's funny because I think that maybe it hasn't changed, but it seems like people are starting to understand that with the rollout of games, MMOs basically, which I guess is sort of a generic term maybe you can use for all of these, you don't have launches that don't go off without a hitch. GTA Online, they even warned people, hey, we're going to have problems, and they seemingly were much worse than even Rockstar expected. Call of Duty, Battlefield, SimCity.
Battlefield 4 has done well this time. What I'd like to say is Battlefield 4 has actually had little to no downtime this time, which is very different. You contrast that with Battlefield 3,
right,
which did have its challenges. And again, what we did was we learned. I mean, you learn in the fire, and you learn, through public interaction, and we have a responsibility to change. And what you saw from us, both through Battlefield 3 and SimCity, was we did change the testing process. We did change how we test against load. We did change the launch process with betas and what we saw there. And we did change the follow-up process to make sure even as things went wrong behind the scenes that didn't have a consumer impact. And we had war rooms set up around the globe. We had different architectures ready to go, and we had firefighting. We had, mock server drops in the last few weeks. I mean, we did a lot of stuff and changed a lot of what we did in an effort to make sure that we weren't impacting consumer experience like we had done in the past. And that's the commitment that we make on a go-forward basis. I think Battlefield 4 and even FIFA this past launch is kind of testament to the fact that, hey, it's possible to figure this stuff out, and it's possible to learn provided you have the commitment and you put the time and the energy into it, and you just don't throw caution to the wind and use hope as your strategy.
Do you think that with the sort of next-gen consoles that are coming and the reliance it seems that they have on online, is that going to be the big thing that developers are going to have to worry about? Just making sure that they have a steady, reliable sort of online environment that they can have their games functioning in?
Absolutely. I mean, we started as a company investing in this under my predecessor, John Riccatello, who is very passionate about our online infrastructure and our online platform and security and ID and these things that he believed were going to be really, really important in the future. And he kind of rallied us as an organization around that. And what I can say is that started to pay off right now. So the ability for us to move, a quantum leap from where we were on SimCity to where we got to on Battlefield 4 is really because we've been investing in architecture and tuning that architecture on a go-forward basis. You think about how people play now. I mean, in the old days, and I say old days, like 5 years ago, which is like an eon of time in our world. I mean, people would buy it, they'd play it primarily offline, they'd play it for 5 or 6 weeks, and then they'd go out and they'd buy another game. Now people are they're buying it, they're playing predominantly online, they're connecting to the experience with their mobile phone or their PC even while they're away from their console, and they're doing it for 6, 8, 10, 12 months at a time. I mean, we're getting record load and record engagement, 6 or 8 months post-launch. And we're getting that not just at a console, but as a PC and partner applications and mobile partner applications. So the level of robustness that you need in your online infrastructure and online platform is exponentially greater now than it was even 2 or 3 years ago. And the companies, I believe, who have invested in that, we being one of them, will be able to deliver better consumer experiences over the coming few years because it's absolutely only going to increase the demand.
All right. Okay, so Selena MKI, millions of, so I'm going to sort of summarize, but I'll go through the whole thing. Millions of players weren't happy when EA shut off Pet Society. The Sims Social and SimCity Social in June. Console gamers have recently filed a class action lawsuit over servers being shut down for their favorite games too. Essentially, the question here is, it kind of revolves around the notion that games get turned off. Mm-hmm. And you were just saying that games do have much longer shelf lives. How do you, I guess it's a two-part question. How do you deal with the fact that probably there will never be a time in the history of a game, let's say within a couple of years, where no one's playing it, mm-hmm. and you may want to turn it off? And how do you decide when to do that? Like, is there a right time, and how do you sort of talk to people about that?
Listen, this is a really tough question, right? Because people invest time and energy into a game. And it's something that we wrestle with a lot. And again, we've been doing business in Asia and Korea and China where we've had to kind of deal with this a couple of times. And it's never an easy decision to make. It just isn't. And we appreciate we have a responsibility to deliver great experiences to gamers, but that's also really the decision driver. There comes a point in time where either technology or server architecture or game experience or something starts to degrade to a level, or just the refreshing of content degrades to a level where we don't any longer feel we are in a position to provide a great game experience. And in those circumstances, we're going to have to make a decision to move on from that game and try and provide different and better game experiences. The commitment that you have from us is that we will always take those decisions very, very seriously. We will always do our best to sustain games for as long as possible. But in the instance that we don't feel like we can deliver a quality game experience anymore for any number of reasons or any number of factors, we will work with the user base and give notice and do our best to help them transition from one great experience to another. And again, it's never going to be an easy decision. It's never one we'll take lightly, but it's going to be one that we're going to have to make from time to time.
Do you feel that in releasing games that you should have some spoken, perhaps, or written commitment that that game will be around for a set amount of time, like at least 6 months or at least some period of time if it's an online-only game?
I mean, it's really hard to say because in a lot of circumstances, the quality of a game experience is really defined by who and how many are playing it. When you think about the nature of these games that are driven by social interaction and sharing and user-generated content, the absence of players actually poses a problem to the overall game experience and the enjoyment of that experience. And so, a lot of these factors that would otherwise govern whether we can deliver a quality experience or not are sometimes out of our control. Whether it's, user generated or whether it's technology generated or it's macro generated or it's, there's any number of factors. And so I think it would be really hard for us to make that commitment. What I am saying though to the teams right now is before you launch a game, let's ensure that we have reason to believe that it has a long and healthy future. Let's really think twice before we put things into the marketplace that we really don't believe are going to have that longevity, or we really don't believe that we can deliver a great game experience for many years to come. Now, we won't always get it right, but we're certainly applying a lot more focus there than I think maybe we have in the past.
Right. AK Blanc, can you tell us a bit about the consequences of removing all online pass limitations from your games? So you guys announced earlier this year, I believe, that decision to get rid of the online pass system, and it was tied to, I think, another thing that you guys were experimenting with, the what's it called, the $5 pass. Anyway, it was this sort of thing that you were playing around with, both the online pass and the idea of sort of extending game life. Mm-hmm. How did that decision come about, and what sort of consequences do you think that will have?
It was a pretty simple decision when it all came down to it. Gamers said they hated it. We stopped doing it. The consequences were they liked us better, and they liked our games better. So that one worked out pretty well for us.
Do you think it's fair to call that an experiment, or do you think that was, like, is that sort of understating what your commitment to it when you first launched it?
You know, when you work in an industry, as you know, we all do, that is on, you know, the bleeding edge of technology and driving innovation and great consumer experiences on new platforms and new geos and new business models with new genres and new ways to play, everything, you know, could be seen as an experiment until it becomes mass market. Right. And there's been a lot of things that we've done that we weren't sure whether they were going to play out or not, but we thought it was worth driving ahead because we believed it was going to deliver a positive game experience to our customers. And in many cases, that has existed. FIFA Ultimate Team was an experiment for us, but it was one of the most engaging game modes we'd ever built in that game, and continues to be one of the most engaging game modes that are built today. And is forming more and more of what the FIFA experience is. It's kind of a disruption to how you play FIFA, the same as I think fantasy football disrupted how you watched football. Online pass, we went with a view that we could do some great things as a result of that for gamers. And what they said is, what you're doing for us doesn't outweigh the frustration that it causes. And we said, okay, we won't do it anymore.
All right, last question. This is an interesting, it's a simple question and a hard question.
Okay.
It's from Orblivion. He says, here's an easy one. Why should we care? It sounds like I'm just being a smartass, but it is a legitimate question. What do you plan on doing differently than your predecessor? It's very open-ended.
It is very open-ended. And listen, I couldn't sit here and tell, is it Orblivion?
Or Oblivion.
Orblivion.
Or Oblivion.
Why he or she should care at all. I mean, they get to make that decision. Our job is to make great games and services. Point blank, that's our job. When I think about how I will be different from my predecessor, again, I have a deep respect for John Riccatello. I grew up underneath him. I think he did a lot of great things in our company and certainly prepared us right now for the expansion of online experiences and social interactions that relates to games. But I grew up as a game maker. I grew up making games. And I think that gives me a different filter with how I look at things and the decisions I make. And you know, as the management team have come together, we've elevated game makers. People like Patrick Soderlund and Lucy Bradshaw, who are some of the greatest game makers in our industry, you know, have very important and prominent seats on the executive team and are driving large parts of the company. And they're doing that with their passion and love and commitment to making great games. And I think where we may have been distracted on a few different issues over the past few years and may have given people cause not to care, our hope as a collective team is that through the ongoing, you know, inception, incubation, development, publish, launch, service provision of great games in the future, that people do in fact care, and people do love the games we make, and people do come to understand and appreciate that what we really are is game makers, and what we really want to do is make great games.
All right, well, thank you so much, and thank you, Polygon, for watching us, and join us tomorrow for another episode of Friends List.